Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of The Shadow Side with Safrianna. I'm Safrianna Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide, and a licensed clinician, healer, teacher, multi passionate creator, author, who is here to talk about social justice and how we can be more in harmony than we are collectively. So, that's part of my mission in the world is to really help people understand social dynamics and power dynamics and how we are capable of entering a new era of compassion and connectedness with one another. And today's a very interesting day. It is the inauguration of our 47th president here in the United States, who is coming back in. He was also president number 45. And with that, the collective is feeling some trepidation. And I know so many of my friends, family members, and just community members are feeling very uncertain at this time with what's coming forward. And of course, it's also Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a day where we look back and remember this powerful and incredibly healing presence of an African American man who was trying to speak up, uh, about all of this injustice and these conditions that weren't fair or equitable or sane or healthy or safe for anyone, and who, ultimately was killed for that. And I just can't help but be struck by the interesting intersection of time that we find ourselves in here and what the heck that means. So as I was sitting with, my dedication to be a little bit more active in speaking live and just talking about these topics no one wants to talk about, I was sitting with what in the world to speak on today, and the picture over time became very clear. And it was that we need to talk about power and control. And I'm going to kind of talk at this from a couple of different angles today. But of course, I do want to just give some content warnings that I am going to be speaking about domestic violence today. I'm going to be speaking on collective control. I'm going to be speaking on a lot of things that are unpleasant. So I just want you to be cognizant of that and really be gentle with yourself if you need to take a pause and step away from what I'm going to be talking about, because it's going to get heavy. So I want to just start today with just a snapshot of what it has happened over the last few days, last few weeks, even. So, something that's really, really, hot topic right now is what's going on with TikTok. And I'm going to use this as an example here. So, the whole situation happening with TikTok right now is a perfect example of media obfuscation and power being used through the media to try and control narratives. They said the quiet part out loud a while back, that during the situations happening with Gaza, that we needed to shut TikTok down because information was getting out about what was happening in Palestine. Again, this is a video on TikTok, which right now is in a very, interesting situation. But um, there were literal narratives of we need to shut TikTok down because it is giving people too much information about what's really happening ultimately. And we now have, I'm just going to show you a screenshot here. So this was a screenshot of what was coming up on TikTok the other day. It says, "Thanks for your patience and support. As a result of President Trump's efforts, TikTok is back in the US. You can continue to create, share, and discover all the things you love on TikTok." Okay. So before this screen popped up, people, when they were going on TikTok, it was showing that the ban was in effect, that they couldn't access the internet, or that they, couldn't access their account basically. And then there was a screen in between this that essentially said something to the effect of, we're working on a solution with President Trump. So I just want to show you this. This is a lovely collage of a ton of news sources back in 2020 when Trump was actively trying to ban TikTok. So Trump wanted to ban TikTok at the end of his first presidency, and this was a big push. And he'd faced a lot of negative backlash on TikTok, and he wasn't a very big fan of that. President Trump has demonstrated over and over again that he doesn't like it when people don't talk well about him, right? So it kind of made sense with his MO, like, I don't want TikTok to be here, they're talking poorly about me. And then it was sort of dropped, and it got quiet for a long time until all of a sudden, here at the end of the Biden administration, there has been a push from Trump's own people, from the people who back and support Trump, to get TikTok banned again. But now Trump is swooping in to save the day and get TikTok back up after causing fear for so many people, because so many people literally do have and make a living from TikTok right now. It's been an important platform for connection, for money making, for information gathering for so long, right? But this is an example of media obfuscation, where when we essentially use our money, right? People in power and who have money and thus control can use that money to control a narrative. We get these very mixed surface level things, right? So on the surface, if you don't dig deep at all, it looks really like Biden administration was the one that banned TikTok, and that now Trump and his administration are swooping in to save the day. But that is not how it actually went. And another thing I just want to briefly point out here is this was a screenshot from Forbes the other day. I believe this was the 16th. And you can see these are some of our most wealthy people. We've got Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg ranked top here. And these are people who are literally working with Trump on these new policy changes and controlling the social media landscape. So I'm curious to see if we're going to find either Musk or Bezos or Zuckerberg buying out TikTok in the coming weeks. I'm curious to see what's going to happen there. But ultimately, this goes back to money, power, and control. And media narratives protect the powerful and the wealthy right now. That's literally what media narratives are doing. And there is this pattern of evasion that is coming through wealth and influence, where there's so much fire hose of information and so many things happening where you can't keep up on it all. And it's overwhelming. But the reality is that, there is this skirting around the truth. There is a lot of shadowy shit going down. There's a lot of bullshit going down. And there's a lot of people who are potentially in harm's way. And part of why I want to talk about power and control is because the TikTok ban, just as an example, is an example of how we could see the control of information flow get even tighter and even more difficult to access nonpartisan information. And it's like a big we're a big walking red flag right now as a country here in the US. It's not good. So I'm bringing all of this up because we are literally playing this game collectively right now of like us versus them. And it's, us versus the trans people, or us versus the people of color, or us versus the immigrants, right? Like that's what society and the powers in control trying to push. But in reality, the people that don't have power are the people that don't have money, and the people that do have power are the people who do have money. And there's a lot of control around that narrative that having billions makes you morally or ethically superior, when in fact, ethically, you had to step on a lot of people to make that much money. Because again, I've said it in a recent live, if you actually go and look at how much billions are compared to millions, it will paint a very stark picture of what it takes to get there. And just looking at the numbers, it gets very obvious very quickly. But what I want to zoom in and out at here is that there's this economic barrier to justice when so few of us are able to access enough resources to even survive. And those resources are continuing to be controlled and hoarded by a select few. And so we have this media that is trying to protect the powerful. We have a condensing of the power into this cluster of very rich, very famous people. And we have the average person, at least here in America, struggling to make ends meet and to get out of survival mode. And so I wanted to talk about power and control and domestic violence and how that is mirroring what's happening here today. So here is a basic resource. I know you're not going to be able to read all of this, but you can go to Google and search power and control wheel. You will see lots of different versions. And ultimately, this is so much of my training. Just for a little bit of background, I'm a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault and vaguely human trafficking. I am also a very seasoned professional who worked in a domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking center for survivors, offering counseling services, shelter services, and etc. I've run groups for people that have experienced these things. I have literally worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have experienced domestic violence. So I am not saying this lightly, and I am not saying this to like cause panic or fear. I am talking about this to point out the reality of what's happening. And so hopefully, if you are in a situation like this, maybe it will unnormalize it for you. Because here's the problem: when the people in power and control are people that we're looking to as our authority figures, as our leaders, are literally doing these things and getting away with them, what else are we supposed to do? Like, the heck do we get out of that? Right? It's crazy making, it's gaslighting. So I'm going to just briefly go over the power and control wheel, and this is the general one. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about LGBTQ, because there's a separate power and control wheel for LGBTQ, and we're seeing that playing out globally right now. And then I want to just compare this globally to what's happening. So domestic violence, intimate partner violence, power and control can look like using intimidation, using emotional abuse, using isolation, denying, minimizing, or blaming, using children, using privilege, using economic abuse, and using coercion and threats. So again, there are so many different specific things in this category, but unfortunately, I have experienced almost all of these things as a survivor, and I've worked with so many people who have experienced all of these things, or just one of these things. And just one of these little slices on the pie, just one of these categories is enough to quantify as abuse. And many of us have learned to dampen, normalize, minimize these experiences to fit in, to try and not lose our community, to try to not rock the boat. And it's not okay. So let's just look at what we've seen happen with this administration that's coming in already. They are making threats to do something to harm potential immigrants, whose status may or may not be certain. They are making threats to harm trans people. They are making threats to harm women. They're using intimidation by throwing around their money. That's also economic abuse, right? Preventing people right now from accessing money, too. I see this huge trend right now where it's really hard for people to get jobs, even though they've been applying and applying and applying, and there's supposedly all of these jobs available. But funny that, right? So interfering with worker education, that with all of the control happening, we're seeing little bits and pieces of that everywhere. Using privilege, though, again, when we go back to our list here, so we've just got these three people at the top, Elon, Bezos, and Zuckerberg, who are playing out a lot of economic control right now. They're really using their privilege to make big decisions because they can throw money around. They're donating millions to Trump's inauguration fund and beyond, right? Emotional abuse, putting people down, making them feel bad, playing mind games, making you feel guilty, humiliating you, questioning your identity. This is all. Oh, and of course, reinforcing internalized phobias and isms. We've seen that happening collectively where the narratives, the languaging that this administration uses really cause people to dig in deeper to their racism if they already are not checking that, dig deeper into their sexism, build transphobia, and question anybody that doesn't want to check the very traditional heterosexual, monogamous, one man, one woman Christian definitions of what it looks like to be a person, right? So that can go into using isolation when we start to push aside these whole swaths of the population because they don't fit in, controlling what they're able to do, right? That is isolating them and causing, at the end of the day, what does all of this cause? More mental health issues. So uh gosh, I could talk about a billion things with this. And it's not a pretty picture, right? When we really dig into what power and control looks like. And just to talk a little bit about what this can look like for LGBTQIA people, additional tactics that can be used to abuse and exert power and control are threatening to out them, threatening to out someone, using their gender identity against them, denying them access to medical treatment on account of their identity, using heterosexism, sexist ideas, homophobic ideas, transphobic ideas to say this is the one right way to be is to be heterosexual, monogamous, straight, all of that stuff. And then isolating people so they can't access fellow LGBTQ community, and all of this can be used to control in a relationship. But now we're literally seeing it play out more globally because the boogeyman right now is trans folks, right? The boogeyman that the power and control needs in order to maintain their power because they need someone to point a finger at right now is our trans citizens. And I just really, really want to, again, throw this out there. Licensed therapist, have studied, got a degree. The whole reality that people are trying to push, which going back to the social media, the obfuscation and control. If you're not familiar, recently Meta changed their policies after Zuckerberg met with Trump, and they changed the policies to allow people to, and they very specifically put this in the language, call LGBTQ people mentally ill on Facebook. So I just want to remind you, as a therapist and somebody who's studied these things, that LGBTQIA identities have not been considered mental diagnoses for a very long time now, comparatively. So it's not a mental diagnosis the way that it used to be. And it used to be that way, again, because of societal narratives, not because of actual metrics. Where we see mental illness come in is as a result of people being bullied, harassed, threatened, losing work, losing liberty over who they are and how they identify in the world in ways that don't even impact the people that they interface with, right? But they're still punished for it. And that is where the actual mental health stuff comes out. And it's usually more diagnoses like PTSD. Yes, there is still dysphoric disorder, and that dysphoric disorder usually comes out of not being able to exist or feel safe being oneself, right? Like it's ultimately about the safety. And when we make it unsafe for people to be who they truly are, of course, there's going to be mental health stuff happening with that. But the core reason for the illness is not the identity, it is the treatment by these external people. So, again, I just want to point out that domestic violence and traditional power and control categories look like coercion and threats, intimidation, economic abuse and control, emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing and denying or blaming, using children and using male privilege in specific. We can go into the LGBTQ specific abuse tactics, which usually look like threatening to out somebody, using their gender identity or expression against them, and denying them access to medical services. So all of these are signs of domestic violence. And not only do we see them play out in people's households, but we are literally seeing it play out in the global collective right now. And so I just want to point out these patterns, on the personal level, because if you yourself are experiencing any of this on a personal level, right, you want to get out of that. As somebody who lived in an extremely violent situation for nearly 7 years, I know how hard it can be to get out. And I know just how absolutely draining and burnt out we get when we are stuck in domestic violence. And we're seeing this pattern playing out at a global level. So even if you are not experiencing this personally, right, there's still liberation to be had at the global level. So if you're experiencing this personally, let's work first to get you out of that so that you can live a peaceful life and do what you're here to do. But on the global level, we have to keep calling out these shadows. We have to keep saying, like, this is literally textbook abuse tactics that are being used by the people who are supposed to be leading our country. It's scary. So, and I am not saying that there is any one right or wrong, quote unquote, side, because if you actually talk to me, I will gladly point out that these sorts of things are used by pretty much all quote unquote sides to differing degrees, and none of it's okay. We can't keep um, covering up actual harm that's being done, and we can't keep pointing the finger at somebody else and saying, like, well, we're going to wait for them to solve it. We need to work to solve it within ourselves. And this is because there is no external salvation. I'll get to that in a minute, but coming back to these patterns, it's so important for us to remember too that this abuse, this power, this control, it's going to impact different people across different communities in different ways, because there's that intersection of multiple forms of oppression that some people may experience. So if you're a queer, Black, assigned female at birth person, or even worse for oppression, a Black trans woman, you're going to experience a very different level of privilege and thus oppression than, say, well, we'll just go with the big example, than a Christian, white, middle aged man, right? So it's really, really important to understand intersectionality, and that all of us may experience some form of oppression, even if it's internal, right? Like, oh, good Lord. I could probably write a dissertation on how many white men just want to create oppression within themselves. And so they do. They oppress their emotions. They suppress their inner feelings and their ability to actually get freaking healthy, because they have all this other privilege that they can essentially ignore that part that's really harming them and harming everyone around them, right? Whereas a lot of us end up doing our work much more quickly because we don't have the same level of privilege and ability to just bypass. We may try, but eventually we have to face the oppression because it's so pervasive for some of us. So again, everybody's going to have a different intersection with this. Everybody's going to have a different view on their own oppression, but it's going to look different across different communities. And that's why it's so important for each of us to do our own work so we can go out and then, give a helping hand and lift others up. That is why Living Luna's slogan is uplifting the others. If I help myself first, I have the energy, the time, the effort, the resources to give you a hand and pull you up too. If I am drained, depleted, burnt out, and I can't even lift my body up out of bed, I cannot reach my hand out and lift you up, right? So this collective liberation work starts within and really is about us taking care of ourselves. So going back to the myth of external salvation, right? There are so many of us at different points in our life that we wanted God to save us, mom and dad to save us, the new president to save us, whomst ever we wanted to save us. And that's just not how it works. There is no one outside of us ever that can fix our problems, that can solve what's happening in our lives. And when we wait for outside help, it can be really dangerous for us because we can find ourselves sinking into the depths of despair with no no way out because we're waiting for that external validation, person, circumstance, whatever, to save us. And it's just not going to work that way. And of course, wealth and privilege affect our ability to receive intervention, right? Access to money can equal access to services, and access to services can make or break our ability to move forward in our lives. So we need outside help, but we are not going to literally be saved by an external figure. And that's why it's so important for us to come together as a collective to build community support networks to help liberate ourselves and each other. So, again, if you are experiencing domestic violence personally, I really want to encourage you to be aware, to document, and to create safety plans where you can. There are all kinds of resources out there for you. If you search domestic violence or intimate partner violence online, you can find all kinds of resources. But coming back to this global level, we have to stay aware. Not every single person can stay aware, but if you're a person, you're a historian, you're a journalist, you are a passionate social justice seeker, you may be being called right now to help document, to help keep track of, to stay aware of, to help others stay knowledgeable. Because as I suggested earlier, I suspect we're going to continue to see even more levels of media control and just the shrinkage of our resources that are non-biased or not bought out by one of those figures that has a lot of money and can literally throw things around and do whatever they want. Again, power and control. And those with more economic power have more control, unfortunately. And that is working as designed. That's how the system has been rigged. And it's about waking up the 99%, right? Waking up more and more of us to realize, like, I can play a role in this. I can speak up. I can do something. I can help break this cycle. And the most powerful thing we can do to break the cycle is break it within us first. Do our individual healing, make sure that we are not contributing to the problem, that we're not holding those beliefs in ourselves, that these people with all this money are morally superior to us, or that they are going to save us, or whatever other BS we might be carrying around and believing. And we have to build resilient communities. We need to tune into our people who are doing the work, who are liberating themselves from their shadows, not by bypassing them, but by seeing them, by lifting their own shadows up and shining the light on them. We do this, we break this cycle by having accountability be at the forefront of our mind. And that means us taking ownership and accountability for our actions, not just calling other people to be, right? Like, I talk a lot about the work that I've done on my own internalized isms and the ways I've shown up in relationships due to even my own trauma, right? We want to often blame other people for our trauma and say, like, I'm excused in having this behavior because I experienced this trauma. But that's not the case either. We're all responsible for our behaviors in the world and how we respond in the world, even if that is our own mental health. So accountability is important, and we need to hold ourselves accountable as well as the people in control right now. And remember that they can't control us on an individual level, experiencing our own joy in our daily lives. There is so much importance in pleasure activism right now and in stepping into enjoying the minutia of our day-to-day experiences. We don't have to be spending a ton of money. We don't have to be going out and having the luxury experiences in order to tune into joy right here, right now, right? Gratitude is the most immense practice that we have at our disposal, and we can be grateful at any point in any time simply by looking for something to be grateful for. Be grateful for your running water. Be grateful for how beautiful it looks outside your window. Be grateful the sun rose. Be grateful for your feline or canine companion or your lizard companion. Be grateful for your house plants, right? Like, anything to tune you into, like, right here, right now, I'm safe. Nothing bad is happening. And I get to enjoy and be in enjoyment in this moment. That is your call to action. That is the big work right now. So I want to leave us with two quotes, because I know this is a lot. This is a lot to take in, and I know I'm going to be sitting with it for the rest of the day and the rest of the week and the rest of the year and the next 20 years. This collective liberation work, and my mission is to be here as a force of harmony. Literally, one of my life themes is harmony. I'm a bio number 9, uh, who are all about unity and balance. Like, my work is to be here to remind you we are all one. We are all technically united. It does not look like it, but we're trying to come back together. And this takes awareness. It takes protecting one another and building collective understanding. It takes supporting our marginalized people and lifting them up. It takes supporting one another across economic lines. It takes all of this. And so I want to leave you with these 2 quotes and I'm hoping I can get through reading them without bawling my eyes out. So I used to be a public school English teacher, and I taught the Diary of Anne Frank. And good God, I know my audience already knows a lot of this stuff. I know you do. And so it's, that hope that I reach someone who doesn't know it. But we are seeing so much of Nazi Germany playing out right now, repeating the early warning signs, some of the late warning signs, like we're seeing the warning signs. And I hold on to the fact that Anne Frank was able to hold on to hope, even literally. Yeah, see, I'm not going to be able to make it through this. Uh, Literally in an attic, stuck there for years and years and years, holding on to threads of hope when she was a person under persecution, and who literally, just by existing, being born in the body that she was born into, the family she was born into, was to be killed and subjugated and tortured for her existence, and still she maintained hope. And so my hope is we can have that too. So this quote is one that always sticks with me, and every year that I read it, I bawled my eyes out in front of my kids, because this is such a truth of what I hold that I want to pass on. So she wrote in the Diary of a Young Girl, "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build up my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death. I see the world gradually being turned into a wilderness. I hear the ever approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet, if I look up into the heavens, I think that it will all come right, and that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again." Yeah, I can't make it through that quote. It's just too powerful. And that is the hope that I always sit with in the midst of all of this, is that people really are good at heart. They've experienced trauma. They're in their karmic swirl. They're in their BS. And yeah, we have to hold each other accountable, and we can't bypass the reality of the harm that is being done to one another. And we can have that compassionate, heartfelt understanding that deep down people are good at heart, and they're harming one another because they've been harmed, or they're afraid to lose what little joy they do have, because the billionaires aren't happy, right? They're deeply ingrained in karmic and just agonizing self pain. Does not excuse what they're doing in any way, shape, or form. And we've got to hold them accountable. But they're certainly not happy. They're certainly not filled with joy. And that's something we can have that they can't, if we allow ourselves to. And so that's where I want to leave us, on the note of Dr. Martin Luther King today, who said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." And that's the work. That's the mission, my friends, is to be the light, not afraid of the darkness, but shining in the darkness, knowing that we all have this darkness within us, and we all possess a kernel of hate within us. And it's by liberating that in love and light that we can move through. And to do that, we have to have a balanced perspective. We can't bypass. We have to stand with one another and call this stuff out. So I will leave you with that today. Like I said, this is a lot, and it's really daunting when we look at this power and control playing out collectively. But the work starts within. lean into your communities, take care of yourself, find your joy, find your pleasure, find your activism. That is what you can do. You can shine your light. And if you need support, know that the Living Luna community is here for you. You can easily find us at livinglunas.com/socials. You can get links to all of our pages and hop on and join us wherever we're at, wherever you're at, so that we can keep standing together and growing together and just being together in this crazy thing we call life. So please feel free to join us wherever you would like so that we can continue to build community. And if you need one-on-one support, know that I offer that in all kinds of forms as well. I am just a 15-minute consultation away from you figuring out how we can work together. If that is something that you want to do, please don't hesitate to reach out. So until next time, I'll be back next Monday with another topic. If there's something you want to see me talk about, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll go with the flow of whatever's arising in the moment. Please take care of yourselves. Be kind to one another wherever you possibly can. And above all, just be the love in the world that you want to see. All right. Bye for now, my friends.